You may remember that time last year when the American Secretary of Education was involved in some lightweight interview or other, and she repeatedly referred to AI as A1. It was obviously a case where she wasn't paying attention enough to important things going on in the world, and when she was given some briefing documents to bring her up to speed, she read that capital I as the numeral 1. And for those of you who are not paying enough attention to the hilarious trivia of the Trump administration and think I might be making this up, here she is in her full glory.
I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning, I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction? How can it be helpful in absorbing, more information for those fast learners? It can be more one-on-one directed. And those are the kinds of things and innovations that I want to see continue to develop.
After I had gotten back off the floor and cleaned up the almond milk and fruit smoothie I had just made for myself, I started thinking about it. The world would be a better place if high on the list of things we had to be concerned about was A1 sauce. Men in suits wouldn't be flying around the world to summits to try to address climate change, and men and women in uniforms wouldn't be firing guns and drones at each other. Instead, the heated debate would be culinary. A1 sauce falls into the category of sauces known, pretty prosaically it has to be said, as brown sauces. Its main competitor is probably HP sauce. I would not be unhappy if the debates got out of hand and suddenly in the Japanese parliament one member was squirting A1 at another member who was having trouble with the lid on his HP. Bedlam ensues. The result is a lot of ruined suits, carpeting that needs to be replaced or thoroughly cleaned, and one feeble member with an eye condition that was only exacerbated by the great gob of HP that got splattered over his entire forehead and dripped downward. I had a look at the labels on both A1 and HP bottles. Each has about 15 ingredients and both have these in common: vinegar, tomato paste or puree, sugar, modified cornstarch, concentrated orange juice, spices, molasses, caramel, and citric acid. Each also has some ingredients that the other one doesn't. A1 has concentrated raisin juice, beet powder, and sulfites. HP has date paste, concentrated apple juice, onion, garlic, and natural flavor. Okay, first let's take care of the two ingredients there that seem a little dubious. Natural flavor means, as Gemini tells me anyway, that, quote, the flavoring agent's original source is a plant, animal, or microbial material, such as fruits, herbs, spices, meat, dairy, or yeast, rather than a petroleum-based synthetic chemical, unquote. But the fact that A1 doesn't mention natural flavor doesn't mean that its original source is chemicals. Rather, thanks again to Gemini, it is, quote, purely a matter of labeling strategy and terminology, not a sign that A1 uses synthetic chemicals or artificial molecules, unquote. Essentially, A1 avoids the use of the term natural flavor because it lists the individual ingredients, whereas HP has to use the term natural flavor because some of its natural ingredients are heavily processed. Phew. The other one is sulfites. As you probably guessed, this is a preservative. So why does A1 need it but HP doesn't? Are the HP executives just saying, fuck it, let it go bad, no one will notice? Well, no. Gemini gives a bit of a mess of an explanation, but the crux seems to be that HP uses potassium sorbate instead, at least in North America, and in any case, sulfites may be in it anyway because it is in some of the other ingredients. But enough about that. Each of these sauces has played a pivotal role separately in two important historical events, one more important than the other one. Let's start with HP. It's been around since the late 19th century, and both its name and its popularity are legendary. The HP stands for Houses of Parliament, and in the United Kingdom it has about a solid 75% iron grip on the brown sauce market. There was one darker colored incident, though, which nearly sank the whole business, and some economic historians call it a miracle that the brand was able to recover. Around the turn of the 20th century, Queen Victoria was not the robust monarch she had been for the previous 60-plus years. No more croquet, no more kicking a soccer ball, aka a football, around with her nephews and nieces, and definitely no more 110-meter hurdle running. The last straw was when her substantial underthings got caught up in one of the hurdles during a particularly speedy race with her husband Albert in 1840, about a year before they were married. The side of her head hit the short grass hard, and the hurdle broke into two pieces, one of which impaled a servant. He survived, but was relegated afterwards to peeling carrots in a dark corner of the kitchen for the rest of his life. Victoria was ailing during the last couple of years of her life, and, as Shakespeare wrote in Hamlet, quote, "When sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions," unquote. Her second oldest son, Alfred, died in 1900 at the tender and much too early age of 55. This was a shock to the system for the Queen, and mere months later, just over 3 weeks into the new year, she met her own demise. It was a messy end, as her pet Pomeranian had somehow gotten into the supply of HP sauce that was normally locked up in the pantry downstairs. During the halcyon days when life was lighter for both of them, Victoria would sometimes dip a little on her index finger, and the dog would enjoy the taste but then shake his head at the bold taste of it and often sneeze, to the delight of everyone in attendance. This time, though, the dog worked alone and, it was confirmed later, consumed some 6 ounces of the stuff and then ran first happily, but then painfully and frantically toward the bed of his beloved owner. She was in a tenuous state, and the shock of fur and feces and thrown-up sauce that thrust itself into her bosom and necessarily onto her face was enough to do her in. She let out a scream. Rumor has it that generations of historians have been, as it were, mum on her uttering the expletive, "fucking dog," and her belly went up and then down, and her soul went off to God on January 22nd, 1901. After a concerted effort of necessary cleanup and some consequently rushed preparations, her funeral and laying in state, and ultimately her burial took place over the next weeks. The Queen was dead, and so was the dog, and the servant pantry mistress was transported to demeaning work involving mushrooms in the village of John O'Groats in Scotland. And so, HP sauce makes history in a pretty infelicitous manner. The A1 story involves another woman, though one much less beloved than Queen Victoria. We're back to Linda McMahon again, the Trump education secretary who didn't know what AI was. Now, Donald Trump is known as a considerate and fair-minded man, and he is meticulous too, and so this flub on the part of McMahon stuck with him. The chief of staff reported the incident to him at his briefing the next morning, And unfortunately, he was in a foul mood after a late night of rage posting on Truth Social about Canada and Governor Carney, as he called him, and the inescapable logic of the 51st state. He asked that McMahon be sent to the Oval Office at 3 p.m. They chit-chatted for a while, and Trump even made light about the A1 AI mix-up. "Yes, I'm sorry, Don," she said. "I didn't even read that briefing, but I did see the headline and a few words of the text. It certainly looked like a one to me." Trump smiled in that way that reduces the world's reserves of smarm by about 1% every time. "Listen, Linda, care for a Diet Coke?" he asked as he pushed the button under the top of the Resolute desk. "Why, sure, thanks. And thanks for understanding." "It was nothing," he was saying as the Diet Coke officer arrived with what looked like 3 bottles, each elegantly covered with a cotton napkin. He took his own, opened it, and had a sip, while Linda sat a little puzzled. He gave a nod then to the Diet Coke steward, and the napkins were whooshed off to reveal large bottles of A1 sauce. They both went at her, the brown stuff ruining a faux silk blouse. The shock of the initial attack sent her flying backwards, and then as she lay on the floor, the 2 men took their final shots. It was in her hair, it covered her shoes, and the less said about her sticky brown hands, the better. The sauce steward left at another signal from Trump, who was now back in his seat thoroughly enjoying his Diet Coke. "Next time," he said, "at least read the first sentence. Now get the fuck out of my office." She made it back to her own office after she called some of her own aides for blankets, but for a long time that day her first tenuous steps out the door were marked shamefully by the shape of a size 10 heel and gradually diminishing A1 sauce.